great pleasure, by the way, both 7 years ago and since then, to have this wonderful partnership, and it's just so wonderful working with Nicola and with all the folks from the Consul General's office and from Via Albertine. So partnerships, relationships, this is the way we build cities.
If you leave here today with one lesson from our remarks, I hope it's that big, impactful ideas don't always have to have pretty pictures. We had community partners who were compensated to be at the monthly meetings and also have meetings with their constituents to take the work of the research teams out into the neighborhoods.
Every field benefits from looking at the broad spectrum of human beings as we are, and it reinforces the importance of inclusivity of women, of people of color, of people of different abilities, and people's different lived experiences. And when you're trying to do that in a planning process, it makes it very messy and complicated and sometimes hard to manage and bring together. But I think it's in that messiness that's where we come up with like the best strategies and the best solutions.
I'm an architect, so I tend to think that, solutions can be found just from drawing, and it's not the case. And I think everybody has kind of really been clear about this, is that we need to put those preconceptions behind us.
Several people have started to talk about this. When we talk about designing for inclusion, we talk about social equity, and we talk about the people involved. Several of the projects that we're talking about involve direct community residents, involve stakeholders, involve continuity. How successful, or what would a reflection be on just what that impact ultimately is?
The biggest thing in my mind that it all comes back to is accountability. So there needs to be clear lines of accountability, and a lot of these projects that I shared about, they're in some ways publicly funded or supported, so there has to be accountability at that point. And there needs to be accountability even with the private partners who are coming in making investments. And I think that's the part that we need to strengthen, quite honestly. How do we shift more power to community groups?
What I find really amazing is the capacity of following this conception from the very beginning of the preparation to the end of the project, which I think this is not so often in France, to have this group of people, really local people, that can be able to follow the whole process. I mean, temporary architecture, installation, temporary between two things is something, but the capacity of following the whole process from the very beginning to the end of the construction, I think is something that is very interesting.
So what's the point? The point is that there was no program at all. It was a sort of, the new idea was an open programming, open to everybody, sort of a bottom-up, if you like, but a more bottom-up organization, heavily involved with the management of a land real estate program for a couple of years. So the innovation was entirely on the side of social innovation.
So structuring the engagement in a way that enables folks to show up with their full selves, and then supporting that, at least in our experience, with live drawing, usually in a large format, whether that's digitally or in person, so that folks can say, no, it's not a red one. You can't put it on top of there. It's actually like this, and you can, in that discussion, have a series of design conversations with multiple people that result in exhibits that can be carried through the project.
A lot of the ways that we're able to keep the temporary going, right, is that we're building on private property and putting what the community wants on private property owned by like 501c3s like churches or schools that have control over the land, and then you actually have the ability to impact it within 1 to 2 years.
By building these relationships with the community in person at the school, it's like you were saying, it's like the how the private kind of like, and then they trust you because they see that you are coming from that neighborhood, like that you are actually putting value to their opinions and then kind of growing them up.
The main issue is to have a call for private developers on public properties. So this means there is a greater flexibility for planning processes, and sometimes it helps to accelerate the operational phase of the project. So it's not so bureaucratic, but the developers can become leader of the project instead of being partners. And that has a big impact on the outcome of these projects. So this means also that the regulatory planning loses impact.
We work with community, they helped us think through that. And then we kept coming back, because we were getting our asses kicked. Bill will tell you, because Bill and I were set up a lot of times in meetings, little old ladies would say, well, could you come talk to us? And then you be in a room with 500 people, and they only sent 2 little old ladies to talk to you. So it's a setup. But this neighborhood is known for community organizing, they're really good at it. So we had to grow up real quick, but be strong in what we were trying to do, because we believed in it. And then we had to set what we thought made sense aside and listen to what people said they needed.
But I just want to point out that how complicated it is to take a building that is not existing social housing and make it social housing. There are people who live in this building who have not submitted paperwork every year to verify that they income qualify to live there, but we're under enormous pressure to make sure that we don't displace people in the name of preserving affordability. And in the shadow of the Obama Center, it's extremely sensitive.
All of the furniture essentially comes from the JPC building, which is the publishing firm that John H. Johnson created, that was the largest African-American publishing firm in the 20th century. They published Ebony and Jet. Here's a copy of Jet magazine with the Jackson's 5 and Janet Jackson and Victoria Home.
They had what we call slumlords, people that did not take care of the homes, and you were just living in very poor housing. And so Dr. King came to make sure that people could have adequate housing. And it's really something that people are still fighting for today, just having adequate housing. Across the street is vacant land. It's not vacant now because we're having our super festival there. But in the very near future, I say near future because that's what I believe, we're going to have housing there where we can actually provide affordable housing for individuals who live in this community.
Many families, in celebrating Sukkot, this is the main thing that they do. They will build a temporary structure, maybe in their backyard, maybe on their balcony, maybe somewhere nearby. And it'll only be up for about a week, and then they'll take it down. And they'll decorate it during that time, but then they'll take it down. Joseph wanted to take this idea and turn them into impactful, community-based structures well after Sukkot was over. So we brought in 3 diverse design teams from all over Chicago and paired them with 3 community organizations that had needs that could be filled by a sukkah.
Like this is 13 abandoned lots, which is really like, socially and culturally like an issue in the city. Like what do we do with these empty spaces? So we got this larger piece here, and as you can see, this like remnant brickwork that the Astro is like given this amazing frame. So the idea on the design, on the architecture side, was like this blending of a very wild, loose-feeling vegetation and plants all throughout that are taken from all parts of the world that can live well here year after year.
There's a big sculpture of Puerto Rican flag over the street, and there's another one at the other end of this part of Division Avenue, which is an attempt in our community to say we shall not be moved from this community, as the neighborhood has really become very popular, and a lot of young folks with more ability to pay higher rents have been moving in. And just north of here in the next neighborhood, Logan Square, has become what I call hipster heaven. In fact, voted as one of the coolest hipster communities in the whole country. And so there's a lot of pressure on the Puerto Rican community here to move somewhere else.
It went from being Bloomingdale Trail, this used to be a freight corridor, to the 606, which is the trail plus a bunch of parks at the entry points. We have all this beautiful landscaping. It's a glorious structure, and it has caused a lot of deep pain in the neighborhood because part of that supersizing, even more shortcuts were being made. And Juanita and I were talking earlier that even in the beginning, you have a bunch of do-gooders who are like, let's meet at a coffee shop or at a bar to make this project happen. And who are you leaving out? You're leaving out your Latino neighbors. And so even that kind of like, we don't have enough capacity to do proper outreach, that also lays the foundation for deep wounds. Once it's got supercharged, then a lot of process gets cut out.
There is a persistent belief in France that social housing doesn't exist in the United States. I don't think that that's just semantics, as Felicia mentioned. I think it's a probably fair assumption that the United States doesn't have social housing because we don't care about our people, which is not false. But what I want you to take away is that there are thousands of us professionals who have devoted our careers to, holding what little social safety net we have.